Well, basically what happened was the producers told the director, whose name was Usan Palsy, that I was so dark that it looked like I would scare everyone, so they wouldn't hire me. Wesley Snipes' white agent from CAA that sent Wesley in for a role, and this is documented, and they called him and said, don't send anybody darker than Denzel.
Do you remember that face, the villain who sent chills down your spine in Menace to Society? The loyal friend who stood firm in Ray? The outrageous Pinky in Next Friday who had audiences rolling with laughter? Clifton Powell, a name not everyone remembers. Did Hollywood ever give him a fair chance? Or did it take everything away from him? Washington, D.C., 1956. In the middle of an America torn apart by racial division, a black boy was born in the Mayfair Mansion's housing projects. His name was Clifton Powell. Mayfair was not a place for dreams. It was the project's walls peeling hallways damp and crumbling. A place where every night the sound of police sirens and screams in the dark became an unwilling soundtrack. Children grew up with violence and poverty, and the future usually split in only two directions, prison or the cemetery. Clifton saw it all. The boys who played football with him on the brick courtyard today could be lost to drugs tomorrow. Families in the neighborhood could fall apart over the smallest fight. From an early age, he had to learn how to live on guard, not to succeed, but just to survive. In their cramped apartment, Powell's only light was his mother. She worked any job she could find, from cleaning to selling goods, just to keep food on the table and a roof overhead. His father toiled in heavy labor, hauling loads, working with his hands. Clifton had to study and work at the same time, constantly proving that he deserved to be there. Once Powell shared, "I grew up in a world where every day I had to choose between being a victim or a survivor. I chose to survive." And he did survive. But not just to exist, he survived to prepare for a long journey, one where Hollywood would both give him the light and take everything away. For Powell, the only option to survive was to accept any role, no matter how small. The numbers tell the story. A supporting role in a TV show during the 1980s paid white actors around $500, $700 a day, while black actors were usually given the lowest rate. For Powell, it was just enough to scrape by. But he endured, knowing that if he quit, the dream would be gone forever. And there was a wound Clifton Powell carried throughout his career. It didn't come from critics' reviews of his acting, but from two cold words in Hollywood: too dark. He once recalled that in a major film, everything seemed within reach until the television executives coldly told the producers, "We think he's so dark he's gonna scare everybody." With one sentence, a door slammed shut before his eyes. The pain didn't stop with films. Powell vividly remembered being cut from a McDonald's commercial, a chance that could have brought both money and recognition. The only reason they said I was too dark. It wasn't just a lost contract. It was a cruel reminder that his skin color was treated like a crime, and tragically, this was not an isolated case. What stood out was his range, the ability to move from terrifying villains to hilarious comedic roles. Audiences will never forget Pinky in Next Friday 2000 and Friday. After Next 2002, the eccentric, over-the-top barbershop owner who could spark laughter with just a wide-eyed stare or exaggerated gesture. Perhaps the most important role of Powell's career was Jeff Brown in Ray, the biopic of music legend Ray Charles. As Ray's friend and manager, Powell delivered a performance full of loyalty, warmth, and deeply human conflicts. The film went on to win 2 Oscars, with Jamie Foxx taking home Best Actor, and Clifton Powell was singled out as a standout among the supporting cast. Ray marked one of the rare moments when Hollywood truly recognized Powell's talent. To this day, Powell has appeared in more than 200 films and television series. Even without leading roles, he always found a way to make his characters unforgettable. It sounds like a movie script, but it was the raw truth of Hollywood, a place where so-called black movies were once dismissed, and where an actor could lose his career simply for choosing to stay close to his own audience. Powell doesn't deny it. In fact, he recounts it with a smile tinged with bitterness, because that choice is what kept him connected to his community. He knew it might cost him some big opportunities, but he never lost his soul as an artist. And when the LA Times asked him about his audience, Powell was clear. "They've kept me alive all these years. Black folks, Latin folks, Asian folks, even young white audiences. I will perform for them." That little black movie story wasn't just about getting fired. It was a declaration. A declaration that in a Hollywood full of injustice, Powell chose the harder road, the road of loyalty to his roots, even if it meant sacrificing career money and the dream of stardom. Powell never told that story to complain or to blame fate. On the contrary, he He speaks of it with equal parts sarcasm and pride, as if to prove that no setback could extinguish his fire for the craft. Because despite it all, his career kept moving forward. He reached a milestone few actors can touch: nearly 300 roles on both the big and small screen. He has appeared in critically acclaimed films, shared the spotlight in box office hits, and embraced small but spirited projects. Notably, the director of The Gospel, where Powell once shined, later invited him back for Peacock's crime drama series, Fight Night: The $1 Million Heist. The message was clear: being dropped by an agent did not mean the end of the road. What's interesting is that Powell was never the type to take anything and everything. He had his own boundaries. In interviews, he admitted there were roles he wasn't comfortable taking, like playing a gay character. This dedication earned him the nickname, the man of every supporting role. And yet, despite his persistence, Powell was never placed on the same level as other black stars of his era, like Denzel Washington's Samuel L. Jackson or Lawrence Fishburne. Not because he lacked talent, but because Hollywood chose to elevate only certain faces. Powell was seen as the man who never went unemployed, but also the man who never became a star. He once lamented, "I work non-stop, but I've never felt like I was given a real opportunity." Powell once mentioned an unwritten rule in the casting world: don't send anyone darker than Denzel. An invisible rule, yet powerful enough to eliminate countless talents right from the start, simply because they were born with skin darker than what Hollywood preferred. Powell sighed bitterly. "I wasn't blocked because of my talent. I was blocked because of something I could never change: the color of my skin." This story was not just one actor's tragedy, but a painful testimony to the injustice that has existed for far too long in the film capital. For Clifton Powell, the dream too often turned into a nightmare, simply because his skin was considered too dark in the eyes of those who held the power. The decisive ruling, 2019. In July 2019, a court in Ohio ruled Powell civilly liable by default. This meant that because he had not fully responded during the proceedings, the court considered the plaintiff to have won. It is important to emphasize, this was not a criminal conviction. Powell was not arrested, not prosecuted, and did not go to prison. But to the public, that distinction was blurred. Headlines screamed, "Clifton Powell held liable in court," without clarifying that it was civil, not criminal, leading audiences to believe he had been found guilty of a crime. Right after the ruling, the American press pounced. Posters from Ray and Next Friday appeared alongside the headlines about the lawsuit. For the media, it was a hot story. For Powell, it was a fatal blow. A career spanning more than 200 roles was suddenly reduced to a single scandalous headline. The price of silence. After the 2019 ruling, Clifton Powell still tried to keep acting. He appeared in small projects, mostly low-profile TV shows and independent films geared toward black audiences. But mainstream Hollywood shut its doors. Major studios were no longer interested. Directors hesitated at the mention of his name. Any project with Powell attached carried questions: would audiences accept him? Would the press dig up the scandal again? Beyond that, in many conversations, Powell has spoken of wanting to work with organizations like Covenant House, which supports homeless youth. He knows what loss feels like, what it means to be pushed to society's margins, because he himself once fell to rock bottom. And now Powell chooses to turn his own scars into advice, into an outstretched hand for young people in need of hope. Clifton Powell, his life today and latest projects. After decades and more than 200 roles, people assumed Clifton Powell would finally rest in the glow of his career. But no. Nearing 70, he remains relentless, still showing up on screen, still sparking conversations with stories he had never shared before. In 2024, Powell made a surprising return in Peacock's crime series, Fight Night: The $1 Million Heist, which dramatizes one of Atlanta's most shocking robberies. His presence, even in a supporting role, reminded audiences that Powell has never truly disappeared from Hollywood. At the same time, he continued to appear in independent projects like Skeletons in the Closet, Capital Punishment, and Return of the Mac. These roles may not bring great fame, but they portray a Clifton Powell who is resilient, steadfast, and wholly devoted to his craft. In his private life, Powell remains reserved. It's clear Clifton Powell has become part of America's cultural memory. From Pinky's wild grin in Next Friday to the haunting voice of Big Smoke in GTA San Andreas, Powell's legacy lives on in the memories of millions who once laughed, cried, or raged at the characters he brought to life.